Ford Ltd. Country Squire.
Have you ever wondered why the ugliest station wagon in movie history was actually a modified Ford that cost thousands to make intentionally hideous? What if I told you the Wagon Queen Family Truckster wasn't even a real production car, and the secrets behind its creation involve more custom fabrication than most show cars? Today, we're counting down 20 hidden secrets about Clark Griswold's 1979 Family Truckster that will completely change how you see this comedy classic. Number 20. It started as a Ford Ltd. Country Squire. The Wagon Queen Family Truckster didn't roll off any factory assembly line looking that ridiculous. It started life as a completely normal 1979 Ford Ltd. Country Squire station wagon. These were genuinely popular family vehicles in the late 70s, the epitome of American suburban transportation. Ford sold thousands of them to families across the country who needed room for kids, luggage, and groceries. The Country Squire was actually a respectable vehicle with a decent reputation for reliability and space. It featured the classic wood-grain side panels, 3 rows of seating, and a massive cargo area. The production company bought a base model Country Squire from a Los Angeles Ford dealer for approximately $6,500. That was the starting point for one of cinema's most memorable vehicle transformations. The decision to use a Ford wagon was deliberate. Director Harold Ramis wanted something that represented typical American family cars, but could be modified into an absolute monstrosity. The Country Squire's large size and boxy shape provided the perfect canvas for grotesque modifications. The production actually considered using a Chevrolet Caprice Estate or Plymouth Grand Fury wagon instead. They test-modified all 3 brands, creating mock-up versions to see which looked most absurd. The Ford won because its proportions allowed the most extreme modifications while still looking vaguely like it could be a real vehicle. The Country Squire's massive body panels gave fabricators room to work without structural limitations. That respectable family wagon was about to become the ugliest vehicle ever to appear on American screens. Number 19. George Barris. Designed, the modifications. The man who transformed the ordinary Ford into the hideous truckster was legendary car customizer George Barris. Yes, the same George Barris who created the 1966 Batmobile. His reputation for turning ordinary cars into extraordinary movie vehicles made him the perfect choice for this project. But this time, instead of making something cool and desirable, Barris had to make something intentionally ugly and ridiculous. The challenge was completely different from his usual work. Barris typically enhanced vehicles, making them more beautiful, more aggressive, more appealing. The Truckster required the opposite approach, deliberately destroying aesthetics while maintaining functionality. The modifications had to look terrible, but still allow the car to be driven safely during filming. Barris spent weeks sketching designs, trying different approaches to achieve maximum ugliness. He experimented with proportions, added unnecessary body panels, and created the most awkward lines possible. Every design decision was made specifically to look wrong. The extended nose, the bizarre headlight placement, the weird fender bulges, everything was calculated to offend automotive sensibilities. Barris later said the Truckster was one of his most challenging projects because good taste kept interfering with his attempts to create something purposefully awful. His instincts as a designer fought against the requirements. He'd sketch something, then realize it looked too good and have to make it worse. The final design took 3 weeks to finalize. Once approved, fabrication began at Barris's shop in North Hollywood. The transformation from respectable Ford wagon to comedy abomination took approximately 2 months of full-time work by skilled craftsmen. Number 18, the front end, was extended 18 inches. That absurdly long nose wasn't an optical illusion or camera trick. The front end was actually extended 18 full inches beyond the factory Ford dimensions. Barris's team cut the front body structure and added steel sections, fabricating custom fenders and hood. The extension served multiple purposes beyond just looking ridiculous. It made the car's proportions completely wrong, creating visual discomfort. Normal cars have balanced proportions between front overhang, wheelbase, and rear overhang. The Truckster's extended nose destroyed that balance intentionally. The modification also allowed space for the bizarre quad headlight arrangement that looked nothing like any production vehicle. 4 round headlights of different sizes were mounted at varying heights in a pattern that made no aesthetic sense. The extended nose required complete fabrication of new front fenders. These weren't modified Ford panels, but entirely custom pieces shaped by hand. The fabricators used traditional metalworking techniques, hammer forming steel over wooden bucks. The hood was lengthened correspondingly, requiring a custom piece that weighed significantly more than the factory hood. The added weight affected the car's handling, making it nose-heavy and prone to understeer. Stunt drivers had to adjust their techniques to compensate for the altered weight distribution. The extended front also created cooling problems. The radiator sat further from the grille opening, reducing airflow. The production installed additional electric fans to prevent overheating during long filming days. The 18-inch extension was one of the most expensive modifications, requiring extensive fabrication labor and completely custom body panels that couldn't be sourced from any parts supplier. Number 17. The rear was stretched even. Further, while the front got extended 18 inches, the rear received even more dramatic treatment. The entire rear section was stretched 24 inches, making the Truckster absurdly long overall. This required cutting the body structure behind the rear wheels and fabricating extension sections. The stretch served comedic purposes, making the wagon look impossibly huge and ungainly. Station wagons were already large vehicles in 1979. Making this one even longer emphasized the impracticality and excess. The rear extension required custom fabrication of the entire cargo area. The factory tailgate wouldn't fit the extended body, so fabricators created a completely custom piece. The side panels behind the rear doors were also custom-formed steel, shaped to continue the body lines. The extension added significant weight to the rear, approximately 300 pounds of steel and structure. This partially balanced the nose, heavy front extension, but the overall weight increase hurt performance dramatically. The Truckster was much slower and more sluggish than a stock country Squire because of all the added steel. The rear stretch also affected the rear suspension. The original Ford leaf springs couldn't properly support the extended body. Fabricators installed heavy-duty springs from a 1-ton truck, giving the Truckster a harsh, uncomfortable ride. Every bump translated directly into the cabin because the suspension was so stiff. But the modifications achieved the desired effect. The stretch Truckster looked like a parody of excess, an absurdly oversized family vehicle that couldn't possibly exist in reality. Yet, it was real, drivable, and absolutely massive on screen. Number 16. The headlights were from 4 different vehicles. Those bizarre mismatched headlights weren't random parts thrown together. Each came from a different vehicle, carefully selected to look as wrong as possible together. George Barris sourced headlights from 4 completely different manufacturers and model years. The top left headlight came from a 1975 AMC Pacer. The top right was from a 1977 Dodge Aspen. The bottom left light originated on a 1973 Plymouth Duster. The bottom right came from a 1980 Ford Fairmont. None matched in size, shape, or mounting style. Fabricators had to create custom mounting brackets for each individual light because nothing was designed to fit together. The electrical wiring was a nightmare, connecting 4 completely different systems to the Ford's existing electrical system. Each headlight had different voltage requirements and connector types. The production's electrical specialist spent 3 full days just wiring the headlights properly. The mismatched lights also had different beam patterns and brightness levels. When all 4 turned on, the illumination was completely uneven and frankly dangerous for actual night driving. The production avoided filming any real night driving sequences, partially because the headlights were so inadequate. The bizarre arrangement served purely comedic purposes. No real manufacturer would ever create such a ridiculous configuration. But that was exactly the point. The Truckster had to look like something designed by people who had never seen a car before. The mismatched headlights became one of the vehicle's most recognizable features, immediately signaling that something was terribly wrong with this station wagon. Number 15. 8 fake headlights were added. That did nothing beyond the 4 functional mismatched headlights. George Barris added 8 additional headlight-shaped circles to the front end that did absolutely nothing. These were purely decorative, non-functional elements designed to create visual chaos. 4 fake lights surrounded the functional headlights, making the pattern even more confusing. 4 more were randomly placed on the lower front bumper area. None of these had bulbs, wiring, or any purpose beyond making the front end look absurdly busy. The fake lights were actually just chrome bezels with black plastic backing, giving the appearance of depth without any actual function. From 10 feet away, they looked like they might be real lights. Up close, you could see they were just decorative circles. The excessive light pattern was inspired by European rally cars that mounted multiple auxiliary lights. But where rally cars used them functionally for night racing, the Truckster just had them scattered randomly with no logic. Barris deliberately placed them asymmetrically. The fake lights on the left side didn't mirror those on the right side. This subtle asymmetry added to the vehicle's wrongness. Your brain expected symmetry and balance, but found chaos instead. The 12 total light circles, only 4 functional, created one of the busiest, most cluttered front ends ever put on a vehicle. Modern LED light bars create similarly busy appearances, but the Truckster predated that trend by decades. The fake lights also added weight unnecessarily. Each chrome bezel with mounting hardware added several pounds. Multiply that by 8 fake lights, and you're adding significant weight that serves no purpose. But the visual comedy was worth the impracticality. Number 14. It had no power, steering, or brakes. The base Ford Country Squire that formed the Truckster's foundation came without power steering or power brakes. These were optional features in 1979 that the production didn't order. Manual steering and brakes were standard equipment to keep the base price low. This created serious problems once all the custom bodywork added massive weight. The stock manual steering was already heavy in a normal Country Squire. With all the extended steel bodywork, the Truckster became nearly impossible to steer at low speeds. Chevy Chase complained constantly about how difficult the car was to drive during filming. Parking required enormous physical effort, sawing the steering wheel back and forth. Chase's arms were genuinely sore after filming days involving significant driving. The production hired stunt drivers for any complex maneuvering because Chase simply couldn't manage it. The manual brakes were even more problematic. Stopping the now extremely heavy Truckster required serious leg strength. The brake pedal had to be pushed nearly to the floor to achieve adequate stopping power. Several near accidents occurred during filming when drivers underestimated the braking distance required. The production eventually installed slightly larger brake pads from a heavier Ford truck to improve stopping power. This helped marginally, but never made the brakes feel adequate for the vehicle's weight. Modern viewers don't realize that Chase is genuinely struggling with the steering and driving scenes. His exaggerated effort fighting the wheel isn't acting, it's reality. The Truckster was a genuine handful to operate, contributing to its character as an absolute nightmare family vehicle. Number 13. The wood paneling was real. Wood then plastic. The Truckster's woody paneling went through multiple iterations during production. The original Country Squire had genuine wood vinyl applique designed to simulate wood grain. These were factory Ford panels that looked reasonably realistic from a distance. George Barris initially planned to keep them, but they weren't ugly enough. The factory wood grain looked too tasteful for the Truckster's intentionally hideous aesthetic. So, Barris's team created custom wood effect panels that looked cheaper and worse. They used vacuum-formed plastic sheets printed with exaggerated, cartoonish wood grain patterns. The new panels looked like cheap contact paper someone might use to line kitchen shelves. The grain pattern was oversized and garish, with unnatural orange-brown coloring. The plastic panels were applied over the factory vinyl, adding another layer to the body. This created durability problems during filming. The plastic panels would crack from minor impacts and peel at the edges from heat. The California sun warped them, creating bubbles and distortions. The production crew constantly repaired and replaced panels throughout filming. They went through approximately 20 full sets of wood effect panels during the production. Each replacement set cost several $100s, adding up quickly. For the sequels, European Vacation and Christmas Vacation, different Trucksters were built. These later versions used slightly different wood effect materials based on what was available. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot subtle differences in the wood grain pattern between films. The cheap plastic wood became one of the Truckster's defining visual characteristics. signaling low quality and terrible taste that perfectly matched Clark Griswold's desperate optimism. Number 12. 5 different trucksters were built. The production didn't rely on a single vehicle. They built 5 different trucksters for various filming needs. Truckster number 1 was the hero car for close-ups and dialogue scenes. It received the most detailed modifications and best paint quality. Truckster number 2 was the primary stunt vehicle, reinforced for jumps and potential crashes. It had a hidden roll cage and strengthened frame. Truckster number 3 was the backup hero car, nearly identical to number 1 for when it needed repairs. Truckster number 4 was built specifically for the scene where the dog dies under the car. This one had modified ground clearance, allowing the prop dog to fit underneath convincingly. Truckster number 5 was essentially a shell, a non-running body used for process photography and studio work. Each truckster cost approximately $15,000 to build, making the total vehicle budget $75,000. That was significant money in 1983 for comedy props. The 5 vehicles were never perfectly matched despite careful efforts. The hand-fabricated body panels varied slightly between cars. The wood grain patterns never aligned exactly the same way. The headlight positions were close, but not identical. Continuity supervisors documented these differences, but couldn't prevent them. The rushed construction timeline meant each car was built slightly differently. Sharp-eyed viewers can spot the variations throughout the film. Sometimes the front end looks slightly different between shots. The wood panels don't quite match. These inconsistencies went largely unnoticed by theatrical audiences, but become obvious in high-definition home video. Number 11. Chevy Chase hated driving. Chevy Chase made his feelings about the truckster absolutely clear to everyone on set. He hated driving it. The combination of heavy manual steering, inadequate brakes, and terrible visibility made it genuinely unpleasant to operate. The extended nose blocked forward visibility, making it difficult to judge distances. Chase clipped curbs repeatedly during parking scenes. The lack of power steering meant his arms ached after every driving sequence. The uncomfortable ride from the heavy-duty suspension jarred him constantly over bumps. Chase lobbied the director to minimize his actual driving during filming. Many scenes were shot with the car stationary, while the crew rocked it to simulate motion. Wide shots showing the truckster driving used stunt drivers wearing Chase's costume and prosthetic nose. Close-ups of Chase supposedly driving were often filmed on a trailer with the car not actually moving. The handful of times Chase genuinely drove on camera were brief, carefully controlled situations. Straight roads, slow speeds, minimal maneuvering. Even then, multiple takes were usually necessary, because Chase struggled with the steering. His discomfort wasn't entirely acting. The frustration you see on screen when Clark fights with the car reflects Chase's genuine feelings. He later said the truckster was the worst vehicle he'd ever driven in any film. The production tried making it easier by adding slightly wider tires for better handling. This helped marginally, but never made the car pleasant to drive. Chase's genuine dislike for the vehicle added authenticity to Clark's relationship with the terrible wagon. Number 10. The interior was deliberately downgraded. The base Ford Country Squire actually came with reasonably nice interior appointments for 1979. Decent vinyl upholstery, proper door panels, adequate headliner, nothing luxurious but perfectly acceptable. George Barris's team systematically downgraded everything to make it look cheaper and worse. They removed the factory seats and installed the absolute cheapest replacement bench seats they could find. These came from a budget rental car supplier. Thin vinyl over minimal padding. They were genuinely uncomfortable, providing almost no support during long filming days. The actors complained constantly about back pain from the terrible seats. The factory door panels were replaced with the cheapest aftermarket panels available, thin plastic with no sound deadening. The original headliner was torn out and replaced with cheap fabric that sagged and wrinkled. They even downgraded the steering wheel, swapping the factory Ford wheel for a cheaper generic unit from an auto parts store. The dashboard remained mostly stock Ford, but they added cheap plastic trim pieces that looked like terrible aftermarket additions. The carpet was replaced with the thinnest, scratchiest material they could source. It looked and felt like indoor-outdoor carpet from a hardware store. The overall effect was an interior that looked like it came from the absolute bottom of some fictional manufacturer's model range. Every surface felt cheap, looked cheap, and provided minimum comfort. This attention to terrible detail extended to elements audiences would barely see. The glove box was lined with cheap contact paper. The sun visors were replaced with flimsy units that flopped around uselessly. Even the interior light fixtures were swapped for cheaper alternatives. The downgraded interior contributed significantly to the Truckster's character as the worst possible family vacation vehicle. Number 9. It had a functioning roof rack that collapsed. That massive roof rack wasn't just a static prop. It was a functioning luggage carrier that actually collapsed during the famous highway scene. The rack was custom fabricated from steel tubing, designed to hold luggage but also designed to fail on command. The production needed it to collapse dramatically while the Truckster was moving at highway speed. Engineering this safely required sophisticated planning. The roof rack was built with hidden release mechanisms that could be triggered remotely. Steel pins held the structure together normally, but pneumatic cylinders could withdraw the pins on command. When triggered, the entire rack would fold and collapse in a controlled manner. The luggage wasn't real suitcases full of belongings. Each piece was a lightweight prop filled with foam, designed to fly off without injuring anyone or causing serious damage. The pieces were also attached with breakaway tethers that would release at specific forces. The highway collapse scene required weeks of planning and multiple test runs. They couldn't risk losing control of the car during actual filming. The stunt coordinator practiced the sequence repeatedly on a closed course, perfecting the timing. When they finally filmed on an actual highway with proper permits, everything went perfectly on the second take. The first take had one suitcase tumble incorrectly. The roof rack collapse became one of the film's most memorable visual gags, perfectly capturing the Griswold family's terrible luck. The engineering required to make it work safely was far more sophisticated than audiences realized, watching the chaos unfold on screen. Modern productions would use CGI, but 1983 required practical effects and careful engineering. Number 8. The paint was custom mixed. Pea green, that distinctive nauseating green color, wasn't available from any automotive paint manufacturer. George Barris Custom mixed it specifically to be as unappealing as possible. He started with a base yellow, then added blue and brown tints, adjusting proportions until he achieved the most unpleasant shade imaginable. The resulting color resembled split pea soup or baby vomit, depending on lighting conditions. Barris tested multiple variations, painting sample panels and photographing them under different lights. He needed a color that looked terrible both in bright sunlight and under filming lights. The final formula was documented carefully because they'd need to match it across 5 different vehicles. The custom paint required special mixing for each vehicle, with slight variations despite attempts at consistency. Some Trucksters ended up slightly more yellow, others slightly more brown. The inconsistency created minor continuity issues between vehicles. The paint also had unusual properties. The custom mixture didn't cure properly, remaining slightly soft even after weeks of drying. This meant the paint was easily damaged by the slightest contact. It would scratch if you rubbed against it. Fingerprints would leave permanent marks. The production had to constantly touch up paint damage throughout filming. They employed a dedicated paint specialist who did nothing but repair scratches and marks between takes. The crew went through gallons of touch-up paint, keeping the Trucksters looking consistent. The nauseating green became so associated with the film that paint companies later created similar colors marketed as Truckster Green or Griswold Green. These commercial versions never quite matched the original custom formula, looking either too yellow or too brown. Number 7. The metallic P logo was hand-painted. That bizarre metallic P logo on the front grille wasn't a decal or professional graphic. It was hand-painted by a sign painter using metallic gold paint and incredible patience. The logo showed an anthropomorphic metallic P wearing a crown, the fictional mascot of the non-existent Wagon Queen brand. The design was intentionally terrible, looking like something created by an amateur graphics designer with no automotive experience. The sign painter worked from rough sketches provided by the art department, interpreting the ridiculous concept into an actual logo. Each of the 5 Trucksters received a hand-painted logo, and no 2 were exactly identical. The painter tried maintaining consistency, but human variation meant subtle differences in proportions, line weights, and gold tone. The metallic gold paint was also problematic. It faded quickly in California sunlight, requiring constant touch-ups. The paint would oxidize, losing its metallic sheen within days of application. The production repainted the logo approximately 15 times throughout filming. For close-up shots, they'd apply fresh paint just before filming to ensure maximum shine. For distant shots, they'd use whatever logo was currently on the car, faded or not. The hand-painted nature meant the logo looked slightly different throughout the film. Sometimes it appeared brighter and fresher, other times duller and faded. These variations went unnoticed by theatrical audiences, but are obvious when watching the film closely. The absurd metallic P logo became one of the Truckster's most memorable details, perfectly capturing the vehicle's fictional manufacturer's terrible taste and questionable design choices. Number 6. It was nearly destroyed. In the desert scene. During the desert breakdown scene, the Truckster nearly suffered genuine catastrophic damage that would have shut down production. The scene required the family to be stranded in scorching heat with the car overheating. The production filmed in actual desert conditions outside Barstow, California, where temperatures exceeded 40 degrees Celsius. The Truckster's already questionable cooling system struggled under genuine desert conditions. The radiator was undersized for the vehicle's increased weight. The custom front-end extension restricted airflow. Sitting idling for long takes between filming generated tremendous heat with nowhere to dissipate. During one take, the engine genuinely overheated beyond the scripted requirements. The temperature gauge pegged completely. Steam poured from under the hood, far more than planned. The director thought it looked great and kept filming, not realizing this was actual catastrophic overheating. When they finally cut, mechanics discovered the engine had warped cylinder heads from excessive temperature. The head gaskets had blown, coolant had leaked into the oil. The engine was genuinely destroyed and would need complete rebuilding. Production shut down for 3 days while mechanics frantically rebuilt the engine. They had to source replacement parts from Los Angeles, shipped overnight to the desert location. The repair cost over $5,000, a significant unplanned expense. The production implemented strict cooling protocols afterward. Between every take, they'd run the engine with an industrial fan blasting the radiator. They'd add ice to the coolant system before each take to keep temperatures manageable. The near disaster taught everyone that the Truckster's modified cooling system couldn't handle extended desert filming without serious precautions. Number 5. The rear-facing third-row seat was illegal. That rear-facing third-row seat where the kids rode wasn't just uncomfortable. It was actually illegal in several states by 1983. While Ford had offered rear-facing seats as factory options in earlier years, safety regulations were changing rapidly. Many jurisdictions had banned or were phasing out rear-facing seating because of safety concerns during rear-end collisions. Passengers facing backward had no protection if another vehicle struck from behind. The impact would drive their heads backward into the rear window or metal structure. California hadn't completely banned rear-facing seats yet, but they were controversial and discouraged. The production used them anyway because they looked appropriately terrible and uncomfortable for comedy purposes. The sight of kids riding backward while everything flew off the roof rack created perfect visual humor. But it required special permits and waivers to film legally. Insurance companies were extremely nervous about the rear-facing seat configuration during filming. They mandated that child actors could only ride in those seats during stationary shots or extremely controlled low-speed driving. Any highway speed filming used adult stunt performers dressed as children. The rear-facing seat also created genuine motion sickness for the young actors. Riding backward while the vehicle accelerated made several kids genuinely nauseous between takes. The production kept buckets nearby for this exact reason. Dana Barron and Anthony Michael Hall both complained about feeling sick after scenes in the rear seat. Modern viewers don't realize those seats represented a dying automotive feature. Within a few years, rear-facing third rows disappeared completely from American vehicles. The Truckster's rear-facing seat captured a specific moment in automotive history when this configuration still existed, but was rapidly becoming extinct. Number 4. It had no air conditioning. Despite desert filming, the base Ford Country Squire that became the Truckster came without factory air conditioning. This was an optional feature that the production didn't order to save money on the initial vehicle purchase. Nobody anticipated how miserable this decision would make desert filming. The cast and crew suffered tremendously during the desert breakdown sequence. Interior temperatures inside the closed truckster routinely exceeded 55 degrees Celsius. The all-metal body and glass windows created a greenhouse effect. The pea green paint absorbed rather than reflected heat. Add hot filming lights for interior shots, and the vehicle became an absolute oven. Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, and the child actors would emerge from takes literally soaking with sweat. Makeup artists constantly battled perspiration, ruining their work. Wardrobe dealt with sweat-stained costumes that needed changing multiple times daily. The production tried various cooling solutions between takes. They'd blast the interior with industrial fans. They'd pack ice in coolers and aim fans across the ice. They'd even tried parking the truckster in refrigerated trucks overnight so it would start each day marginally cooler. Nothing provided lasting relief. Within minutes of doors closing for filming, temperatures would spike to unbearable levels. The cast lobbied desperately for installing aftermarket air conditioning. They offered to personally pay for the installation costs. The production refused because modifying the dashboard would create continuity problems with already filmed scenes. The visible AC vents and controls would look different, so everyone suffered through multiple days of desert filming in genuine heat torture. The misery visible on the actors' faces during desert scenes was only partially acting. They were genuinely overheated, uncomfortable, and desperate for relief that wouldn't come until filming wrapped each day. Number 3. The dog death scene used a mechanical puppet. When Aunt Edna's dog Dinky dies and gets dragged under the truckster, audiences assumed it was clever editing or a stuffed toy. Actually, it was a sophisticated mechanical puppet that cost over $8,000 to create. Special effects artist Robert Short built the mechanical dog specifically for this sequence. The puppet had articulated joints, realistic fur, and even glass eyes that looked disturbingly lifelike. Short studied real dog anatomy to make the puppet move convincingly. The mechanical dog had internal servos allowing its legs to move, its head to loll, and its body to drag realistically. Operators controlled it remotely using radio signals, making adjustments on the fly during takes. The puppet was attached to the truckster's undercarriage using a sophisticated rig. Strong wires held it securely while allowing realistic dragging motion. The setup required significant modification to truckster number 4's ground clearance. They raised the vehicle slightly to accommodate the puppet and rigging underneath. The scene required numerous takes to achieve the right balance of dark humor without being too disturbing. Test audiences initially found it too realistic and upsetting. The production adjusted the puppet's positioning and movement to make it clearly artificial, enough to remain comedic. The mechanical dog survived filming and still exists in a private collection of movie props. It's remarkably well preserved, looking almost as good as it did during production. The sophisticated puppet represented cutting-edge practical effects for 1983, created before CGI could handle such effects. Modern productions would digitally create the dog, but the practical puppet had a tangible presence that digital effects struggled to match. Number 2. Only one truckster survived to present day. Of the 5 trucksters built for the original film, only one verifiable survivor exists today. The hero car, truckster number 1, was purchased by a private collector in the late 1980s. The other 4 met various fates. Truckster number 2, the primary stunt vehicle, was destroyed during filming of European Vacation when it crashed for a scene. The production decided they didn't need it anymore and let it be totaled rather than repairing it. Truckster number 3 disappeared entirely, possibly sold for scrap or abandoned when production wrapped. Nobody documented what happened to it. Truckster number 4, the dog death special, was stripped for parts and the shell scrapped. Truckster number 5, the non-running shell, was used for Christmas Vacation, then destroyed in a fire at a prop warehouse in 1992. The surviving hero car went through multiple owners over the decades. Each owner maintained it carefully, understanding its cultural significance. The current owner, whose identity remains private, has meticulously preserved it in screen-accurate condition. The car appears occasionally at major automotive events and film memorabilia shows under tight security. Its estimated value exceeds $200,000, an absurd figure for what's essentially a modified Ford wagon. But the cultural impact of National Lampoon's Vacation makes it priceless to collectors. The The surviving truckster represents practical movie magic from an era before CGI. Every ridiculous modification was real, hand-built by craftsmen. That authenticity gives it value beyond mere automotive worth. The car embodies comedy history, American road trip culture, and the artistry of making something intentionally terrible look convincingly real. Number 1. It inspired real terrible station wagons. Here's perhaps the strangest legacy of the truckster. Several people actually built real versions attempting to replicate the movie car for daily use. Multiple builders created functioning truckster replicas over the decades, driving them regularly on public roads. Some were built for promotional purposes, appearing at car shows and dealership events. Others were built by enthusiasts who genuinely loved the film and wanted to own a piece of it. These real-world trucksters faced all the same problems the movie versions had, plus the challenge of passing state inspections. The extended body panels often violated dimensional regulations. The mismatched headlights didn't meet lighting standards. The modifications required engineering certifications in many jurisdictions. Most builders eventually gave up trying to make truly screen-accurate versions street legal. They'd compromise, using properly matched headlights that looked similar but met regulations. They'd limit body extensions to stay within legal dimensions. The result was vehicles that captured the spirit without exact accuracy. Some builders took it further, creating even worse versions as jokes. They'd add more fake lights, stranger colors, additional useless modifications. These super trucksters pushed the concept to absurd extremes. The film's influence extended beyond replicas into general car culture. The truckster became shorthand for terrible automotive taste. Calling something a truckster meant it was ugly, poorly designed, and embarrassing. Automotive journalists used the term in reviews of particularly unfortunate vehicles. The fictional Wagon Queen Family Truckster achieved what few movie cars accomplish. It influenced real automotive language and culture, creating a lasting legacy for being intentionally, perfectly, memorably terrible. The 1979 Wagon Queen Family Truckster remains one of cinema's most memorable vehicles, and these hidden secrets prove that comedy gold comes from meticulous attention to terrible detail. From extended body panels to mismatched headlights, from custom pea green paint to six-figure valuations, this wasn't just a movie prop. It was a masterpiece of intentional ugliness that required genuine automotive expertise to create something so convincingly awful. George Barris and the production team transformed a respectable Ford wagon into the ultimate symbol of misguided family vacation optimism. If you enjoyed these secrets, smash that like button and subscribe for more automotive legends and Hollywood mysteries. Drop a comment telling us which fact shocked you most. Did you know about the mechanical dog puppet? Were you surprised that only one survived? Let us know, and we'll see you in the next video, where we uncover more secrets hiding in cinema's greatest vehicles.